Hi, welcome back to the Healing Medicine Show. This show is produced on Thursdays at 1 p.m. Central Time as part of the Healing Medicine newsletter. The vision for this show is to provide healthcare professionals with resources and inspiration for both personal and professional development practices, especially those that are rooted in holistic health. We believe that the change in healthcare starts by focusing on the health and the healing of the healthcare professionals. Today, I am very excited to welcome the pharmacist turned entrepreneur. He's been featured on Shark Tank. He is the co-founder of Pricklee Cactus Water, Kun Yang. Kun, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Yeah, pleasure to be here with you today, Blair, as well. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. So we're going to dig into your story and how Pricklee came to be. But first, I want to start off our conversation by asking you the same question we ask all of our guests, which is, what does healing mean to you?
It's a really good question. So healing, I would think about is, for me at least in my journey, and I feel like it's a pretty evolving definition that I feel very comfortable in now. But it's really just discovering self and optimizing, yourself to be the best version of that, and I think that's really been for me at least, this entire journey of life has been one of healing, where as that self-awareness has continued to become more and more evident, and I have much more reason to be the best version of that for my growing family, for example, and the people around me, the people that rely upon things that I'm involved with. It's just, to me, it's really important that I better myself and heal through whatever challenges I've been faced with in life, to take those as lessons learned or as reasons to be better and improve, so that I can just deliver the most value to the people in the community around me. So that's what healing is to me.
Absolutely. And we talked a little bit before we started, and this is exactly what we were talking about. This journey of entrepreneurship has impacted our lives in so many ways. So I'd love to hear more about kind of your background. How did Pricklee come to be, and why is it important to share this story with healthcare professionals, especially as, I'm personally have gone through a lot of changes in what am I drinking? What am I, giving my kids for juices and things like that, as further my study of nutrition and the microbiome and the gut brain health and how everything plays together. I love what you're doing so much. What was the thing that kind of started way back when you first started your healing journey? What was that thing that kind of first got you interested in entrepreneurship, in personal development?
I think that's evolved a lot. Yeah, let's definitely start there, and then I'm happy to share how the Pricklee story folds into that, because I think growing up, I never ever envisioned myself as an entrepreneur. That's never how I categorized myself. I don't think I knew what the word meant. I think in many ways, I felt a lot of imposter syndrome actually growing up, in terms of just it never felt like the things that were coming so easy to people around me were coming to the same level of easiness to me, right? It just felt like I was, I could always test well in school and stuff, but that's always because I just crammed and I was able to just memorize things and concepts pretty quickly, but then I would forget them, a couple months down the road, and just felt like I wasn't stacking the same level of skills and knowledge that other folks were. And that led to, just some different, issues that I kind of were was this me? Was this, the way that I was learning? You realize over life, though, as things become more evident in what you start to do, that a lot of the skills and the way that you learn, the way that you add value to the world isn't really kind of how it's dictated to you as a kid, right? I learned from talking, I learned from doing, I learned from writing. And it's that's not exactly how school is given to you, right? In many, many ways. So how that manifested to me was, it always felt I had to look at from an opportunistic standpoint of almost survival too. What can I do to position myself for success at the next level, when everything was so competitive in life, and everyone seemed to be a little bit, more well situated to be successful than what I felt like personally, right? And I kind of look back on that, and I think spotting opportunity and adapting and finding your own lane and carving your own path, which tended to be what I ended up doing, because it felt like as long as there's a blank slate ahead of me, I could always kind of dictate how that would look, and then run into the next barrier, right? And then maybe find a different challenge after that. for a long time, it just felt like I was kind of running away from what the norm was. And then eventually, when entrepreneurship collided with that journey, I realized for the first time that like I had found a reason of being. I found something that I was actually pretty good at, and that things that I was implementing for entrepreneurship was sticking, and it was something that was so deeply ingrained in technicality and depth that through the growth of my journey, I actually truly felt confident that like this is what I'm supposed to be doing, you know. And so that's been sort of the start of that journey, and that was that was like 20 plus years of life, right, to get through before I really found a place where I truly can, again, just provide the most value to people in society.
I think that confidence piece is super important. So, you know, we're both parents, and seeing my children kind of be put into this box, in school, and the programming that we receive in school, which is important to teach us how to behave in society. At some point, especially I think in pharmacy school, I began to feel that I didn't belong, that maybe I'd made the wrong decision in going to pharmacy school. And I know the attendees watching, because this is something that a lot of pharmacists and healthcare professionals don't necessarily discuss in a public forum. But I really had this sense that I didn't belong. I remember writing my pharmacy school essay was about studying novel drug development and medicinal herbs and stuff like that. And it just, you fit in this box, and you fit in this protocol, and you feel like if you're too different, it's just disruptive or different for the sake of being different. So that kind of wears on your confidence. But when you can find something that you're passionate about, that you truly believe in, it gives you that kind of boost to begin to take steps towards how you really want to show up in the world and the impact you want to have. So when did that passion strike for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I don't even know that I felt like pharmacy wasn't for me for most of that journey. Like I started working in pharmacy in like 10th grade, summer of 10th grade. This was when I was in Canada, and I was doing like a summer program as a pharmacy tech intern essentially. And I kept doing that, every summer through pharmacy school. So going into pharmacy school, I always felt like, oh, this is something that I could absolutely see myself doing. Also because at the time, again, like it felt like, all right, this is a great job. Like you're meeting amazing human beings. You're like actually caring for them. You're being a part of the community. It felt like a really good fit. And, we were really fortunate at the University of Maryland, where I went to pharmacy school, where the school was so well situated. And it was located, if you kind of think about it, in Baltimore, right between the FDA, a lot of industry, a lot of great hospital systems,
yes.
And even managed care institutions. And so this world of pharmacy was actually very broadened out as soon as I started pharmacy school. All of a sudden, coming in 2011, I was like, oh, like I'm going to become a community pharmacist. And it's like by the end of week one, it was like there's like 10,000 other options. And that's when I think things started to become really interesting for me, because it was like, okay, well, there's other things that you can do. So throughout all this journey, there was still a sense of like, wow, like I'm not maybe as good at clinical pharmacy as some of these other folks are. And so like, where can I find my lane? And eventually I went towards the managed care side and then the biotech side, because I was just super interested in population care. And I was really interested in thinking about things on a very macro level, like how can I impact the most number of people with like the resources and knowledge and skill set that I had. And I always felt that like, okay, well, because I'm leaning deeper and deeper and my life was getting more specific, like my skill sets were becoming more specific over time, that when I eventually entered the workforce, I would feel a sense of like belonging, that like I was supposed to be here, right? And sure enough, I started working in the industry, and within the first couple of years, I was like, why is this feeling of like this weird like existential question of like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Like, why is it still lingering? Like I couldn't shake it. And then one day I remember walking into like an open office setting, and there was like people all around me, and I was just like looking around, and I was looking at all these people that I admired so much, and these were like essentially the heroes of my industry, that I would be like, wow, if I stayed here for another 20, 30 years, I'd be doing exactly what they're doing. And that's when it kind of hit me, like, is this what I want to be doing for the next 20, 30 years? Is that what I want to be doing when I'm, at the end of my career? And I wasn't sure if that was the right answer. And so that's really where I think the question of like, well, then what is it, right? Started to really, really percolate in my mind. And that journey of like then discovering self and understanding like, how do I change this perspective that I had of myself, where it was like, hey, I'm Kun the pharmacist, And those two parts of my identity were so intertwined that I couldn't disconnect them. And instead, how do I just look at Kun as a person? And I have a lot of different components to who I am as a person, and pharmacy is really just one of them, and as opposed to the defining version of that, right? And I think that unlock really allowed me to then mold into a more adaptable person, and to your point, heal through that journey of like understanding like I can do something that maybe isn't traditional, what a pharmacist does, but then can still add a ton of value to society, even from a health and wellness perspective in a different way.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with that, identity of being a pharmacist or being a doctor or being a nurse. Like you're in this box. So if your I am statement is always I am a pharmacist, then it makes it hard to start a beverage company, or it makes it hard to, go do something completely different. I've met pharmacists who become realtors and who are becoming stylists and renovating homes and helping people get organized and teaching people to cook and, so many different things. So for me, I came up with this word, pharmapreneur, in order to help me shift my identity, because I felt that imposter syndrome around calling myself an entrepreneur, because I still had this, tie very closely to pharmacy. So kind of made up this word to encompass my new identity and to help guide me for this is where I'm going. So the pharmapreneur identity was kind of what gave me that North Star in my career. So I love that you had this self-awareness to and the space to sit and think about, is this what I really want? And asking ourselves, is this really what I want for my career? Because I think so oftentimes we get caught in the, well, it's easier to just go this path. I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to, this is the direction that I think my career is going. So I'm just going to go with it because it seems like too big of a jump, or, I don't really know exactly what it looks like, or it's too risky or whatever. So this is, for me, this identity shift was kind of the biggest piece that I had to overcome to feel confident in calling myself an entrepreneur. And the next step was surrounding myself with other entrepreneurs. So you have a co-founder as well. How has that relationship as both of you have grown? Because my understanding is that Mo also comes from a healthcare background.
He's also a pharmacist. Yeah.
A pharmacist. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we always talk about this. Like it's been like our therapy, really. We talk about it all the time. Like we're so fortunate and privileged to be able to build this, with some pretty amazing people that are aligned with the same values that we have, and I think that's what makes this journey really special, is like you're building something that feels so self-expressive and feels so true to who we are. And through that we find community, and through that we find people that align with that. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that don't, but it doesn't matter, right? It's like at the end of the day, I think that's really what I think we've learned through that journey, is like just finding the confidence of being your authentic self. And like, the more you can hold yourself accountable to like the truth of that, the more, just like healing you can go through as a person, right? So it's been really therapeutic for us, and it's really allowed us to just both identify with like this growth journey and this idea that what you and I both chatted about, which is like the journey is the destination, right? And if you over focus on the destination, which is what society always tends to train you on, whether it's like this idea of like retirement at 65, right? A lake house with a boat, and like, somewhere nice and warm and sunny, or for business, like this idea of this exit, right? The sale of a business and like, XYZ. It's like, those are all interesting, like snapshots in time that don't really tell the whole story at all. And what's more important to focus on is like not to lose sight of the fact that journey is happening, and that there's a lot to win in that journey in terms of just self-growth, right? And so we always reflect on that. And every time we look at how far we've come as individuals, and not just as leaders of the business, but then leaders in our households and leaders in our communities and leaders in our friends circles, et cetera. It just makes us really, really grateful for like that process, right? And it reinforces this like mindset that we now have, which is like we're just absolutely addicted to growth. like growth is not a thing that like scares us or like is something like learning and like working doesn't scare us. It excites us. It enables us to know that like there's another side to this. Like, and once we get past that growth journey, we're going to be even better human beings to, again, just create more value for others. And then what does that next step look like? What does that next step look like? Right. And as long as you hold yourself to some strong virtues and values, ideally, like you're contributing positively to the world. Right. So that's what excites us a lot, you know, in that journey. And I think having a co-founder to relate that to and connect on that spiritual level is really, really, really powerful, because otherwise it's a really lonely journey, you know, to kind of process that and like just be like, am I going insane? Am I, you know, like, am I really like, what am I rooted to? Right. That you lose that sense of anchor when you branch out from something that's so solidified in your career and in a profession like pharmacy, where the rules are so defined, the careers are so defined, and like people are so defined in how they act and how they dress and how they talk and how they interact with the world. So when you take that anchor away and you're on your own, it's really easy to like not be grounded. So having a co-founder be that source of grounding, you know, for both of us, is really, really, you know, awesome.
Entrepreneurship can be a lonely journey, and it can be, you know, a little bit of a scary place to be. So having a community or having someone who is going through that journey with you, is committed to growth. We were talking about the entrepreneur's journey. Does it go from point A to point B? It's not a linear journey. A lot of times it really does look like a lot of ups and downs and an emotional roller coaster, sometimes all in the same day. And it's about like getting comfortable with the discomfort, I think is that muscle that you're building, and that helps you to grow. So I'd love to ask, because one of the things we really like to focus on in this show is the healthcare system. And for healthcare professionals who are beginning to question whether their practices, align with their personal values and their beliefs, and they're, looking for fulfillment on a bigger level, how would you recommend that they begin on this journey that you and Mo have been going through for years now?
It's I mean, that's such a hard question, you know, because it's like, I think that journey of where you end up is so personal, and sometimes like a lot of it's outside of like the control of the individual too, right? I think that's like where it's I'm like, I don't know how the heck did we end up here, 5 years down the road, like it's like, how the heck did we survive through all the challenges that we've survived through in this business, and how we continue to scale, how we continue to grow. And like I wish I could explain a lot of it, but I do think that one of the important questions that people do need to ask themselves is like, how do you define success? Because yeah, I mean, like we go through life, and I think especially when you go through STEM and you go through like healthcare, your life is so pragmatic, right? Like it's like you go from this stage to this stage to this stage, and you know exactly what you need to achieve to get to the next stage. The rules are written, even the GPA that you need, the types of leadership roles, the organizations, like to deviate from that is very unlikely to lead you to success, right? And so I think in many ways you're kind of trained through this journey to like to your point, act within a box of like society, but it does put you in a bubble. And I think that was the biggest realization that I saw coming out of just the I guess specifically the healthcare space and into health and wellness, into CPG, consumer packaged goods, and seeing just like the richness of humans across the board, and seeing all these different people doing all these different things and having different levels of fulfillment throughout all that, and value systems are just completely different from what STEM had taught us. And I think when you go through like a system of life that's so focused and so defined, narrowly defined and specifically defined, that you start to view success with that same level of like lens, right, and perspective. So it's like, well, what is success? Is it being climbing the corporate ladder in a biotech institution? Is it becoming a very world-renowned research clinician within a hospital setting? Is it XYZ? I think those definitions are pretty clear, and I think you can generally agree across the board for most people within healthcare, like what that epitome of success could look like, especially going through school, right? You just have like these ideas.
Yeah.
But you start to realize like people are just way more diverse than that, and then when you start living the real world, you're kind of like, oh wait, like I really like these other things like travel. I like these other things like whether it's exploring food, whether it's dance, whether it's arts, whether it's creativeness, whether it's business, right? Whether it's all these other things that are other aspects of who you are that sometimes without this clear definition, definition of success, you stifle, right? You stifle that a lot, and you don't allow that part of you to really blossom, because it just does, it counteracts with like the standard definition of success. So I would just say that like everyone's journey is unique, and but I think it really helps if people sit down and just ask themselves, like, when I'm looking back at my life and 50 years, 40 years, right? Like, what does success look like? Personally, what does that look like? What does that true definition look like? And, in many, many facets of that question. And the more specific, the more clear, the more, authentic that answer is, not just like what I think society would want me to look like, but what me as a person would truly find successful. And I would feel fulfilled achieving that level of success, like on a human level, on a spiritual level, on an emotional level, right? Like I just would, on an overall holistic well-being level, feel very fulfilled if I achieve that success. If you're truly authentic to that question, and then that became your North Star, as you mentioned, and you started working towards that, I think that, you will end up a lot more fulfilled and end up a lot more content. And generally speaking, you'll spend more happy moments professionally throughout your career than if you didn't ask those questions and you just went with the status quo, because the chances of people really being successful in the definition that they grew up with and were raised with through STEM in their careers,
Right.
is probably like, I would say single digits, percentiles, right? And most people probably aren't that way. And we're glad that there are people that are, but I wouldn't say that every single person is wired that way as well.
Yeah, I think, I always say that business is an act of self-expression, and it helps to understand who you are in order to have a successful business, and understanding your own idea of success. Does it look like living true to who you are? Does it look like more time freedom, more creativity? That was something that I really missed. I'm a very creative person, and being in the STEM field, that's not encouraged. It's more attention to detail, evidence-based, follow the protocol. And so, even though I can do that and provide great clinical care, it didn't light me up. It wasn't something that I could literally talk about all day, like I can, when we start talking about personal growth and healing, and healing medicine. So, I think it is something that oftentimes, unless there's some kind of big event. So I was working as a clinical hospital pharmacist in 2014, pregnant with my first child, my oldest, and got the news that because of declining reimbursement and budget cuts, that my position was going to be cut to PRN. And that for me was the first time that I ever thought, maybe I could try something else. Like maybe this, I can look at this as a gift and an opportunity to make a different choice. And I started my business. I started an MTM consulting business. And then about a year later, there was another local position as a director of pharmacy for a clinical hospital position opened up here, just one county over. And I went, I applied, they offered me the job, and that day was probably worse than the day I actually lost my job, because it was the first time I had ever turned down what many would have considered a dream job.
Yeah.
And, and it was just, I just couldn't see myself in that role. I just knew that wasn't for me. And thankfully, my husband supported my decision to continue on with the MTM consulting thing and not take that position. So I do think you use the word stifled. I think that many healthcare professionals are feeling stifled by the system, by the way we're able to practice, to share our knowledge, the time we are able to spend with our patients. So there's much left to be desired, but I do have hope that things can change, but they're going to change through the individual healthcare professionals. So last question I'd love to ask, if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice, when you were kind of in that place of creative, stifled, pent up potential, what would you say to a young Kun?
Um, I would probably say that uncomfortable curiosity is a good thing to chase. Is not this thing that should be a reason for concern or a reason of self-doubt or a reason that should impact confidence or just everything, all those different manifestations of what that like uncertain sort of curiosity would look like, but rather like that is in fact like your person, your spirit, your body, yourself, just kind of telling you that there's another answer out there, and just to keep listening to that, and then eventually just finding it and finding confidence that sometimes it takes longer than for some folks to get to that answer than others. But if you keep asking those questions and you listen to yourself, eventually you can get to a point where when you do answer that question, if that's a question that does nag you, and I don't think it's something that everyone has, and I'm happy and glad that not everyone has that, because that means a lot of people have found a lot of success, right, in what they're doing.
Right.
And it's a really good thing, because we need people to feel successful in what they're doing in order for the world to be the best that it can be. So I would just say that if it is something that nags you in that definition, just to keep chasing those answers and eventually finding a place where you can really build a thing. It doesn't have to be the thing. And I think people get stuck with that too. It's like,
yes,
just indexing on perfection. And it's like, it's about progress. Life is about progress. It's not about perfection. There's no such thing as perfection. So it's just about progress and finding a thing that you can really find yourself in. And a thing will eventually become the thing if you put enough work and time and energy into that journey. Right. And so just realizing that, again, that isn't a reason for self-doubt and lack of self-confidence. It's really, or questioning what that means for you as a person. I think it's really just your body telling you that, like, hey, like, there's probably something else there for you to look at, and you should probably address this if you want to get rid of this feeling, because there's no other way to do it, and it's okay. So I think that's what I would have probably told myself.
I love that. Progress over perfection. That's definitely not a message that we heard a lot in our healthcare training. So I think that understanding that the mindset around entrepreneurship, around growth, around trying something new needs to be a different set of skills. It needs to be that different approach. So this has been a super fun interview. I want to also give a plug for Pricklee. So my family had gotten the variety pack, and you said now they're available at Sprouts. Is that right? Sprouts grocery stores?
Yep, they're available at Sprouts nationwide, and it's just like the perfect national launch partner for us. They're based in Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, land of the cactus, so that's always helped. And we're excited to get into the hands of as many people as possible to just really get people off of artificial and high sugar drinks to something that's natural, giving them some benefits and is actually good for them. So we're really excited about it.
I highly, highly recommend. I've been giving out samples to anyone that comes by my house. I've been try this cactus water, and they're going, cactus water? What? I've never had cactus water. I'm like, just try it. And the mango has been my favorite. So we've really been enjoying it, and the kids absolutely love it. And so I can feel really good about sharing something healthy there. So Kun, thank you so much for sharing your journey and sharing your insights. This has been a fantastic conversation, and my pleasure really to know you and to be able to share your story on this platform, the Healing Medicine Show, to provide an inspiration, hopefully, for a healthcare professional out there who is wanting to take the leap into entrepreneurship. So again, thank you so much for joining us here today, Kun.
It's been a blast. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. And likewise, really enjoyed the conversation, and hope to connect with other like-minded pharmacists and healthcare providers out there.